Welcome, everyone, to Three Side Sports Talk. Todd Kleinheinz alongside Jerry Sue and Jeff Krapinski. We're at the end of January. We are one game left in the NFL season. Always a sad time when the football season winds down, just the complete opposite of to when opening day rolls around and the excitement is palpable. So one game down means Championship Sunday is behind us. It got me all choked up. But Jerry, your thoughts?
Well, speaking of choking, how about that Packers Bucks game? You like how I did that?
Yeah.
I mean, look, when your back is against the wall, right? When you're the Packers and your back is against the wall, you're down by 8. Granted, it's 4th down, you're on the 9. You got to put the game in the hands of your MVP quarterback, Aaron Rodgers, right? But instead, Matt LaFleur chose to kick the field goal, relied on his defense to get the ball back, and apparently everyone besides LaFleur knew that Brady was not going to let that happen. I mean, there's a reason Brady's now going to his 10th Super Bowl. So I feel like that play and one other play in that game, which was the touchdown that Tom Brady threw to Scotty Miller on 4th down with 13 seconds to go in the first half, when everyone thought the Bucs were just trying to get it 4 yards, because it's 4th and 4 to try to get that field goal before the half. And that one was as well a game changer as well. So yeah, so I think sorry, Todd, can you start this over? I'm like totally messing this up.
Yes.
Sorry. Scratch that. How do we start over? Are you just going to?
I'm just leaving some dead space between the recording here. All right, ready?
I think so.
Welcome, everybody, to Three Side Sports Talk. I'm Todd Kleinheinz alongside Jerry Sue and Jeff Krapinski. We are down to one more NFL game this season, the Super Bowl coming up in a week and a half, which means Championship Sunday, usually the Final Four of the NFL, as they like to call it, is behind us. I have some thoughts, but before I provide mine, Jerry, your thoughts after Championship Sunday.
Well, I think we could pretty much just pencil in Najee Harris for the Bills pick right about now, right? I mean, the Bills offense became pretty predictable without much of a running game. They were completely reliant on Josh Allen, which was not sustainable against a Chiefs team that was hitting on all cylinders. And as for the NFC Championship, I think 2 plays perfectly encapsulated the game's result, right? One was that touchdown that Tom Brady threw to Scotty Miller on that 4th down with 13 seconds to go in the first half, when everyone thought the Bucs were just trying to get 4 yards because it's 4th and 4 and just trying to get a field goal before the half, yet they get that touchdown. And then with about 2 minutes to go in the game, with Green Bay's back against the wall, they did the opposite of what Tampa by going conservative. Down by 8, faced with the 4th down on the Bucs' 9-yard line, you got to put the game in the hands of your MVP quarterback, Aaron Rodgers. But instead, Matt LaFleur chose to kick the field goal and relied on his defense to get the ball back, which apparently everyone besides LaFleur knew that Brady was not going to let that happen, because there's a reason Brady's now going to his 10th Super Bowl.
Yes. And Jeff, as a card-carrying member of the Tom Brady fan club, you had to be excited about such situations.
Yeah, I mean, what more can you say about this guy? I mean, 10 Super Bowls, that's unbelievable, right? Like, and that's what I always appreciated about him, whether it was Belichick or Arians or it was just Brady. I appreciate the aggressiveness, because the Patriots used to do that all the time. Score before the half, or just be aggressive, take the ball and score. It kind of reminded me of the Niners I grew up with. We're gonna take the ball in the beginning. We know this deferring stuff. I don't think that was an option then, and then go down in the field and score. But so that was just awesome to see him just, we're just gonna score right here, and then just took like a gut punch right there. I thought that was great. As far as LaFleur, I don't know if that's not being talked about enough, or if it is being talked about enough. I mean, the same thing the Browns did. You punted the ball away. Why are you kicking a field goal? Nobody needs a field goal there, which is why I'm always ranting, get rid of these kickers and don't fucking pay your kickers, right? But for some reason, they want to kick field goals when you need 8 points just to tie it. I mean, I thought that blew me away.
Yeah, I think you saw a real dichotomy in the coaching ranks, because you saw 2 weeks ago when we talked about just Andy Reid salting games away with the aggressive play calling calling that pass on 4th down to Tyreek Hill. And, that's the aggressiveness.
Right.
And the aggressiveness of Kansas City, once again, even though they got down by 2 scores against the Bills, and then they come back, and you start looking at guys like Tyreek Hill, and I mean, he looks wide open all of the time. And then once he gets the ball in his hands, he's making these defenders look just silly. I mean, you see them lining up as if they're going to tackle, and then they start shuffling, and before you know it, he's by him and 5 yards downfield. So I was actually a little disappointed in the Chiefs-Bills game, just because I thought that was going to be the closer game, the more shootout game. But in all honesty, once Kansas City got rolling in that middle part, it was basically just playing against the clock, because at no time did I feel that Buffalo had a chance. And I also think
they did early on, right? When it was 9-0.
No. After that, yeah. But I saw Patrick Mahomes really show his maturity, and not that he ever showed he wasn't mature, but he is just mature behind his years about how he handles what would be perceived difficulty. And we're in the championship game, we're down 9, we're the defending he never fell out of his element. Whereas Josh Allen, you saw him get flustered. You saw him flipping the ball at the defender's head after he takes a sack. I mean, you saw some of the immature qualities of a guy who wasn't quite ready for prime time. So it's one of those things. He's a young quarterback. He might be able to, grow out of that. But I thought you saw a real difference between those two quarterbacks. And then in the Packers-Bucks game, I thought you saw a real difference in the coaching, because like you guys said, here was my thought when the Packers had the ball at the 8-yard line. And again, people have gone through the plays, like some people say Rodgers should have run there for a couple times, whatever it was. But once you got to 4th down, the option to me was you have to go for it, because, and this is what I don't think is being talked about enough. If you get it, okay, and then you get the 2-point conversion, you're tied. But if you don't get it, if you go for it and don't get it, you're giving the Bucks the ball back on the 8-yard line, right, and still need a touchdown. If you kick the field goal, you're giving the Bucks back the ball at the 25-yard line, and you still need a touchdown. So the only advantage to kicking the field goal was trying to close the spread or trying to hit the over, because there was no benefit to kicking the field goal when you still were going to give the ball back to Brady on both situations and needed a touchdown in both situations. So the only variable was, do you want to give him the ball at the 25 or the 8? And giving him the ball at the 8 was the easy call for me, because I'm like, if you go for it and don't get it, all right, defense, we're at least pinned up against the end zone a little bit, so we can try and do something. When he kicked that field goal, I thought it was a complete lack of trust in his quarterback, understanding of the situation. And again, LaFleur looked massively outcoached, much like he did last year when they played the Niners, and it was a complete steamrolling. And I think I texted Jerry, or I might have texted both of you. I think LaFleur is a very flawed coach, and is the type of coach so far who has demonstrated, I can play in the NFC North and I can get to our double-digit wins, but when push comes to shove against the good teams, he cannot stack up.
But he also has an MVP quarterback to fall back on, right? Whether he can coach well enough or just because he's got Aaron Rodgers and he's able to do that. A couple of things real quick I just wanted to mention when I was ranting about the field goal situations. That's what the Bills did. they're kicking field goals. You can't kick field goals against the Chiefs, especially, right? Maybe it works some other times, but not against the Chiefs. You can see that this game got away from them super fast, right? So,
well, but it was not completely surprising that the Bills went with that approach because they have a head coach with the defensive background, which is why one of the reasons I'm a huge proponent of hiring head coaches with more of an offensive background is because my expectation is that a guy like that would be more aggressive just inherently. So that's what made Matt LaFleur's decision such a surprise.
Well, and that, so I didn't want to see the Bucs go to the Super Bowl. We talked about that last week, but one thing that is, kind of apparent and going to be good if things hold steady is Bruce Arians has showed his aggressiveness. Andy Reid has shown his aggressiveness. It's going to be two offensive coaches, two quality quarterbacks going head to head. And this should be interesting because each coach has got to want to find some, they're going to have to go deep into that playbook for something they haven't run at all this year, catch the defense leaping. So I like the idea that this could be such an entertaining Super Bowl.
Yeah, on the surface, it seems like it should be a high-scoring affair. But on the other hand, I mean, both defenses, particularly the Bucs defense, are playing well. And right now, going into the game, the Chiefs are going to be without both their starting tackles. So
yes,
I think that'll make it somewhat more interesting.
And I mean, not that we can't go back to the game if anyone has another point, but the biggest news of the whole weekend almost had nothing to do with either of the games. You're talking about Aaron Rodgers coming out immediately after the game, and say what you will, whether it was the emotions of being the number one seed and losing at home or whatever it is, and he put into question his future in Green Bay. Now we know the Packers took the quarterback in the first round of the draft last year, didn't sit well with him. But he seemed to come into this year. He bought into LaFleur's system. They ran out the 13 wins. They had the number one seed. And Rodgers is known to be somewhat of a moody personality at times, but to immediately call into question his future, not what a disappointment, I can't wait to run it back next year with, type of thing, was, basically put the NFL world, on buzz that, do we have another quarterback who's going to be leaving? So, Jerry?
Well, I mean, obviously Aaron Rodgers' career is winding down, and he's got to be frustrated with the way obviously the game went down, as well as kind of how the Packers have done over his career when it comes to the playoffs. I mean, considering he's been in 20 playoff games where he's thrown 45 touchdowns to 13 interceptions, yet the team's playoff record in that time is 11-9. And in NFL history, there have been only two quarterbacks who have won 3 MVPs, but only 1 Super Bowl. Can you name those 2 quarterbacks?
3 MVPs and 1 Super Bowl.
Well, let me give you the first one because I'm sort of assuming this one guy is getting his third. Let's put it that way.
Okay, so I would have to guess Brett Favre being one of them.
Yes.
And then the other one would have to be,
I don't know. I was going to say like an Elway or a Young.
I'm assuming he's getting one.
Yeah, it's got to be Tom Brady.
No.
No.
What?
Well, I don't know how many
MVPs in 1 Super Bowl?
I'm sorry, I was on the MVP. I don't know who would have won.
Okay, let me repeat. So there have been 2 quarterbacks who have won 3 MVPs, but only 1 Super Bowl. Those 2, Brett Favre, as you mentioned, and Aaron Rodgers, assuming he gets his third this year, right? And that tells you so much about the way the Packers organization is as far as their underachievement, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, you have from 1992 until now, you've had 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks, and you've got 2 Super Bowls to show for it.
Yep. Well,
and that could probably be a whole segment of Packers missteps and not getting who they need to get, and just taking guys in the draft and building their team and not getting anybody to want to go play there or whatever. But
and I'll say that it's it's not even as if they are, the John Elway Broncos or the Jim Kelly Bills, where they've got there multiple times and just haven't been able to finish, where they've run into the buzzsaw that was like, they've only gotten to those Super Bowls, which means they've come up a few steps short. So, I mean, it is surprising. I mean, that you bring up that figure for sure. But I also got to think, the Packers for so long were thought of as a draft and develop team. They weren't going to spend for free agents. I mean, you're talking about, they still talk about when they signed Reggie White as kind of, that was their big free agent get, 30 some odd years ago. So the fact that they're not as involved in free agency, the fact that this front office didn't look at what they had and say, we're going to get one of these top level receivers to pair with Aaron for these last couple of years, it speaks volumes to the missteps that have been the Packers.
Yeah, we can't forget that they did also go after Charles Woodson as well. So they got Charles Woodson in free agency. But yeah, I just go back to the time when Aaron Rodgers really wanted Marshawn Lynch. I think at the time, I don't remember exactly who the running back was. I don't know if it was like Brandon Jackson or whoever they were relying on.
Dorsey Levens.
What's that?
Dorsey Levens.
that was way back. But then you look at Tom Brady, and granted, he just got to the Bucs, but he pretty much had free reign. Like, hey, I want Antonio Brown, done. I want Gronk, done. I want Leonard Fournette, done. Right? And Aaron Rodgers, like, dude, I just want somebody. You go ahead and move up in the draft and take my replacement in our window to, where we can win a Super Bowl. So, and honestly, I don't know if Aaron Rodgers wants to get traded. Who knows, if this was just him rocking the boat, trying to get the Packers front office attention to either get him some help in the draft or in free agency, or maybe simply angling for a contract extension. I don't know, or maybe all the above. But I do know that the only way Aaron Rodgers gets traded is if he pulls a Carson Palmer and follows through with the threat to retire, like Palmer did with Cincinnati years ago. Because
but not only that, but when I first, back to Todd's question, I guess when I first heard that, though, I thought, if Deshaun is going to take 3 first, what's Rodgers going to take? Even though he's older, but you're talking about the MVP, 5 first. What are you willing to give up here? Like, that just seems way prohibitive.
But the difference being that, Deshaun's 25.
Yes, just the age difference. But Aaron's got 5 years, easy, right?
And on the flip side, Aaron's done it, right? Aaron's got the hardware. So yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So it seems like the front office has regrouped in the past couple days to kind of come together and go, everything's fine, nothing to see here, right. We're fine, but it does put in another variable to what is an incredibly crazy quarterback offseason, because we've talked about, you've never seen a 25-year-old in his prime of Deshaun Watson wanting to trade. A 37-year-old Aaron Rodgers coming off of an MVP, possibly wanting to be traded. The Rams basically threw a wet blanket on Jared Goff yesterday when someone asked, is Jared Goff your quarterback for next season? And Les Snead said, he's the quarterback today. Boy, what a vote of confidence.
Right, what a ringing endorsement.
Yeah, we don't have a game for 9 months, but today I get to call myself the quarterback. So you're talking about high-priced quarterbacks who their organization just doesn't believe in. And it's amazing because when the carousel stops spinning, somebody's going to be left out. And somebody like the Colts, who literally don't have a quarterback on their roster, they're going to have to get somebody. Are they going to get desperate enough to make the pitch for Aaron Rodgers? Like, here's our 4 first-round draft picks. Or are they going to, hey, okay, well, let's go the Jared Goff route and let's let's send a first for God. Like somebody is going to be left out because if you're the Packers, you move on from Rodgers, you better hope Jordan Love is the real deal because if he fails, what a disaster. If you're the Rams and you offload Goff, and I am not a Goff fan. You know, I think he's average at best, but if you move off him, you better have another plan besides John Wofford or something. So this quarterback carousel is just, it's crazy. It's intriguing. It's going to be a lot of fun to talk about, but where do you guys sit on these quarterbacks who 2 months ago when during the season, you never thought they would become available?
Well, first of all, with the Rams, I'm very curious to see what happens there because I heard Les Snead basically say anything's possible, but they have no first round pick and they've got all this money earmarked in Jared Goff. So first of all, what do you have to trade, right? If you don't have your first round pick and who are you trying to get? And second of all, who's going to take Jared Goff if you're going to trade him? And third, Rams are already like 20 million over the cap. Yeah. And if you deal Jared Goff, you're going to have in excess of however many millions of dead money on the cap in addition to that. So I just think the Rams situation is really interesting. I can't wait to see what happens there.
Yeah, not only is the Rams situation interesting, but then you have all these other names out there that maybe you weren't even thinking about. Like, just wrote down a couple. Like, so you have Breeze retiring, right? Rivers. Is Roethlisberger retiring? Is Alex Smith retiring? Like, I'm sure there's more out there, right? Then you have Stafford and Ryan and Rodgers and all these guys saying, I want to go somewhere else. We're always talking about, let's get one of these guys, right? Like, and not stick with Jimmy G. You have like the Cowboys who like, do you give Dak money? I mean, I don't know if I'm giving Dak any money. I mean, there's so many things out there, so many variables, so many guys available, so many changes to come. This is a very interesting offseason from that perspective. Well, I don't think we've seen anything like this for quarterbacks.
No, not at all. But there's definitely one quarterback we know who's definitely going to be available because he's told his representatives to tell their team, and their team is basically giving it the green light saying, all right, he's on the block, and that's Matthew Stafford.
He's the first to fall, I guess.
Yeah. And as you guys know, I'm just not on the Matthew Stafford hype train or sob story, because look, has he put up some impressive stats in his career? Yes, and I get it. The Lions as an organization has not been good, but it's
hold on. They've won one playoff game in 60 years. You saying not that good is the most generous statement possibly. I mean that they've been awful.
Okay, but I guess the reason I say it in those terms is because people are making it sound like, man, they're just so bad. If Matthew Stafford was just on another team, he'd be a Super Bowl quarterback. I mean, he's part of that, right? And again, part of it is, okay, so I was going to say, it's not like Stafford had Arna's Battle as his starting wide receiver, right? He's had guys like Calvin Johnson, Golden Tate, Kenny Golladay. I mean, those are legit receivers, right? And I know you've pointed out, well, he's never had a running back to, or running backs they've only been like 1,100-yard running backs that he's ever had. Dude, Josh Allen, we were just talking about him a second ago. He went pretty far this year without really any real running back support to speak of. So I guess what I'm just trying to say for me, and as far as like the Niners situation is concerned, I just don't think Matthew Stafford is a big enough upgrade to like a Jimmy Garoppolo, right? Especially when you consider that Stafford will be 33 years old. He's had ankle issues and a ligament problem with his throwing thumb this season. He broke his back last season. I mean, I wouldn't give up my first round for him. But at the same time, with all these teams looking to get a new quarterback, I think he'll fetch more than a first.
Yeah, I think a lot of these teams will throw out there, whether it's the Colts, possibly. That might be an easy one, right? Something like the Colts. But yeah, I don't know if I want to give up that much. I kind of agree with what you're saying. But I don't think he's that old. I definitely think he'd be an upgrade, but would he be that much of an upgrade is the question, and how much are you willing to give up? Like, where's the price tag? If I give up a second, someone like the Colts for sure going to give up a first. I mean, I don't know. What do you think, Todd?
Well, So I believe Stafford would be an upgrade. So I would be in the camp of, if you can get him at a reasonable price, to go get him. Now, what is that reasonable price? My reasonable price is not the first round draft pick this year, not number 12. Now, whether
but you said before you would give up the 12.
Yes, but the idea being that because there is now an influx of quarterbacks possibly on the market, I don't know if the bidding will necessarily require that if you're offering next year's first. If you offer this year's second and next year's first, would that get it done? That's a trade I would go with, because I'm also under the assumption that Jimmy will invoke his no trade clause if it meant going to Detroit. I mean, who wouldn't, right? So in other words, you couldn't package him into a deal, which would mean you would have to flip him to someone else for a second or third round draft pick. So if you're giving up a 2 this year and a 1 next year and can recoup something for Jimmy, you're basically, I would say, you're giving up next year's 1 for Stafford. And because I believe Stafford would be an upgrade over Jimmy into the playoffs and making a run, you're talking about a draft pick between 25 and 32. Right. Would you give up a draft pick between 25 and 32 for that chance at the Super Bowl? And you got to remember, as Jerry has pointed out, the money situation is kind of the big hindrance with the Niners and all teams because the cap's going lower. But Stafford's cheaper than Jimmy. So if you're getting a small amount of relief, would you do that?
I still wouldn't, for me, only because I think that the upgrade between Stafford and Garoppolo, if there is in fact an upgrade, it's marginal. I mean, I think, okay, so Stafford has a better arm, but that's about it as far as I can see it.
Well, but isn't that the one thing lacking in this offense, is the ability to go deep to Brandon Ayuk or Deebo Samuels, thus opening up those crossing routes for Shanahan's offense and Kittle over the middle. Like, if the a legitimate threat of going deep were in the tool chest, doesn't that just enhance the overall offense? And that's just something Jimmy doesn't have.
Right.
Again, you're right. It's something that Jimmy doesn't have. And from that standpoint, it would be an upgrade. But look, I wanted to give Matthew Stafford a chance. So today, this year, I don't get a chance to watch too many Lions games, but I watched, I think, the Lions against the Colts. And one of the passes I saw, I don't know if it was like week 8, was a pick 6. It's like he didn't even see the cornerback, something that we've seen Jimmy do, which is why, for me, even last year when y'all called me a Jimmy hater, which I wasn't, but just calling it out for what I saw, I'm like, dude, I'm sitting down watching a Lions game and immediately I see a pick 6, and then going to take a look at Matthew Stafford's history. Did you know that he is the active quarterback with the most pick 6 thrown in the NFL right now? 23. So to me, it's not all about arm strength, right? I mean, you want a guy, yes, would it be nice to have a quarterback with a stronger arm than Jimmy so he can drive it down the field and open more things up? Absolutely. But I also don't want to get a guy who's pretty much similar to Jimmy in terms of, inopportune turnovers, particularly your pick 6. Yeah. So and not only that, but you're talking about, well, if the Niners can give up this, then would you do it? I just think, given where we are as a league and with the teams that need or want a quarterback, and with, Stafford, I think with the hype train, with his agents and whoever kind of paving the way over the course of the season, talking about, like getting these people talk about how, man, if you had him, you can win a Super Bowl. I think a team like the Colts would be giving up a first and a second this year.
Sure. And I agree. I think there's going to be ample offers and for many of these quarterbacks, including Stafford, which is why I don't think the Niners, are a slam dunk to get him, even if you offer this year's first. If you offer this year's first and next year's second, the Colts can still counter with, something else or other teams. So I understand that. But before I get to my next question, which would be a follow-up to Jeff, your second this year, your first next year for Matthew Stafford.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think it's worth it. I think he has enough of an upside. I mean, I don't think the age, to me, it doesn't really play in that much. You're only talking a couple of years. And to me, Matt Stafford's been relatively healthy or played through some injuries, and he can hit that ball down the field. And that's, I think, what we're looking for to open things up some more. So I think, to me, it's worth it. He can also probably restructure his contract and also save some money currently on the contract, and who knows what he can do with that. So I think I would do that, whether or not the Niners are willing to do that, or if other teams are willing to give up more, I get it, but I'd probably do that.
And not only that, but you were talking about his contract. Who's to say he doesn't want to get an extension if he gets traded? We've seen that right?
No, but I absolutely think you give him an extension, because if you give him an extension, you basically tear up your current contract, tell him we're going to pay you $10 million this year and $30 million next year, so you get the addition of being able to restructure that contract for money this year, which is, I mean, even
there's restructuring in their extension. Like I wouldn't feel comfortable extending him beyond, I think, what he's on the hook for the next 2 years.
2 years, yeah.
Right. I wouldn't want to extend
3 or 4.
Yeah, but okay, well, I mean that's another. I'd have no problem extending him, yeah. But okay, but that leads me to what would you like to happen, Jerry? What would you like to happen for the quarterback situation now that, you kind of, even if we're saying Rodgers isn't really available, he might be available, Goff is up. What is your choice? You're John Lynch right now. Not saying you can get it done, but what packages are you putting together, and what's the priority?
I think that's tough, because I think prior to all this, right, we were talking about the importance of keeping the gang together, making sure that we have good depth, and that, that was the reason why we were contemplating offloading Jimmy and going with a quarterback that's more kind of that middle tier, just so that we can afford to bring back all these other players, right? Now, if let's say you went after a Deshaun Watson, the way that his contract is currently constructed, you could still do that, because this coming year, he's only owed $10 million, which was kind of like the magic number that we were talking about. If you can get a quarterback for $10 million this year, you can bring back all the key pieces, right? But then if you do go after a Deshaun Watson, you're going to have to mortgage the future in terms of first-round draft picks.
Right.
So I guess when you're saying, if you're John Lynch, what would you do? I guess it just depends on how confident are you in hitting on all those middle round type of draft picks. Because if I'm confident in myself and identifying talent and what I need in those middle rounds, I actually wouldn't be that hesitant to give up multiple first round picks to get Deshaun Watson. Especially you put him in this offense with these players right now, you're immediately in that Super Bowl conversation. So I would do that, but it just depends on how rich are you asking me. How rich will the trade package be?
Well, ESPN put out an article today that says it basically starts at 3 1s and then something. So most likely you're talking about 3 1s and a 2 either this year or next year in exchange for Deshaun, and I'm sure they'll throw in some 5th rounder coming back. But the focal point being 3 1s, at least 1 2 for Deshaun.
Done. I would do that in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I think we talked about this last week. I'm on board with that. Whether or not we can trade Jimmy as part of that package as well. Somebody got to get rid of Jimmy, but I guess even if we release him, worst case scenario, it doesn't affect us that much, right? So I think that $2 million or something like that.
Yeah, so. I think with the Jimmy situation, it's a little tricky, right? Because unless you structure like a 3-way deal between, obviously, like let's say with Houston to get Deshaun, and if Houston doesn't want Jimmy, to bring in another team into the fold, let's say the Patriots, unless you do that, there's no way you're going to be able to trade Jimmy to get any compensation for him. Because once you acquire a quarterback, let's say Deshaun Watson, or let's say if you got Matthew Stafford, as soon as that happens, Jimmy has like no value because everybody knows you're going to have to cut him.
Oh, no, I totally disagree. I absolutely disagree because once you get Stafford or Deshaun, that opens up another team that needs a quarterback. And like we said, the amount of teams who are going to need a quarterback is immense. And I just pulled it up. There's no way the Rams can trade Goff. He's dead money, $65 million.
Well, I know. That's why when Les Snead said anything can happen, I'm so curious because I do not think this can happen.
No, yeah. But that's my point being that, see, now we differ a little bit because my assumption is Jimmy is worth a third rounder, right? So if you make the trade for Stafford or Watson and you still got Jimmy on the hook, well, does another quarterback needy team, Jeff mentioned Washington, or we're talking about Indianapolis, or we're talking about any number of teams. Miami's in the mix.
Right.
Is there any? Shoot, I mean, we haven't talked about Darnold possibly moving. Wouldn't it be easy to flip Jimmy to a team for a third rounder? Because again, these teams are going to start getting desperate once these quarterbacks start coming off the board. And if you're left, unlike the Niners, who, if they don't get a new quarterback this year, you might be somewhat disappointed that there wasn't an upgrade, but at least you have a competent, average at worst NFL quarterback. Some of these teams don't have that. So is the pressure to get something done, and no matter what, whether you trade him or cut him, it's $2 million that you're going to be hit with. So it doesn't matter for the Niners.
And don't forget, Jimmy has a no trade.
Right.
So he can easily just say, I don't want to go to these places that are offering you, right? Like, so, okay, for example, let's say we got a quarterback, and now what do we do with Jimmy because he wasn't involved in that, the original transaction? So let's say he wants to go to New England. New England wants him, right? But New England knows, well, unless Jimmy's not going to okay a trade to any other team. So the Niners are just going to have to cut him.
That's fine. But you think Belichick's going to fork over $27 million?
Well, I think that if Jimmy gets to play where he wants, and I think if you're taking New England as the example, they have ample salary cap space. So what I'm saying, that for sure is possible that they would give him the amount of money that he perhaps would want. But I think in the big picture, what I'm saying is that I think it would be very difficult for the Niners to recoup anything in trade.
Yeah.
If they get a new quarterback first.
Yeah, back to our or who we would like to see. I think my number one would be, like Jerry said, Deshaun. I think I'm comfortable with the 3 ones at this point, especially teaming him up with the current roster we have when healthy, and just adding Deshaun. I think we would be in a very good position for the next several years. So I think we'd be fine with that. If not Deshaun, I mean, I maybe the Stafford angle and see what kind of trade could work out for Stafford. I don't think Rodgers is really going to be available. I mean, Matt Ryan might be a name, but I don't know if that's even possible given all the limitations with the contracts and the salary cap. And then if nothing else, maybe just a draft, or you just keep Jimmy, I guess, at that point.
Well, I think if you don't get Deshaun, personally, I'd fall back on the Marcus Mariota idea that we had when all this crazy talk about quarterbacks moving from here to there started.
Yeah.
It's very possible, but again, what are you giving up for Mariota?
Right.
I would give up a 3rd round pick.
Okay. Yeah, that's probably about, I would say, fair value,
but like you said, there's going to be so much movement, right? We don't know what's going to happen with Mariota. We don't know what's going to happen with Sam Darnold. We don't know what's going to happen, so I think that's what's going to be awesome this offseason, just to see how all of this shakes out.
So do you see Mariota as an upgrade, or do you just see Mariota as a less expensive quarterback that's going to allow you to re-sign free agents?
Both.
You see him as an upgrade.
Upgraded Jimmy Garoppolo? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a tough one. I think in some ways an upgrade. I think his ability to escape the pocket and or create might
that's
be
huge, right? That's huge.
There, but whether or not can he see the field as well? Can he hit it? Is he accurate?
Well, maybe it's because we've seen the Jimmy Garoppolo experience with Kyle.
Yes.
And in my opinion, I think in some of your guys' opinion, perhaps, he's reached his max, right? What you see is what you get, right? To bank on him getting better, I'd rather bank on seeing how Mariota would do when paired with Kyle Shanahan in this offense. Someone who's more mobile, someone who's got...
We saw what Jimmy almost regressed almost, right? He got worse in some of those games. Not seeing the field in certain situations or not escaping or making bad throws. Still
And in no way am I making the comparison, but when you saw Rodgers play this past week, when he was missing Lazard because he seemed to be trying to force it to Devontae, and when he didn't run, like, I understand the importance of, if you got a guy with some legs who can move around the pocket, that is such a valuable asset. But we also saw that, did Rodgers do that because all year he's been basically beaten into his head that the scheme, the Shanahan scheme, is you don't run, you wait for guys to get open, you find your primary target. And, we saw kind of the negative, if you will, of what the Shanahan offense does, is not allow those guys to improvise or, freelance nearly as much. It's always about staying in the pocket, going through your progressions, going through your progression twice, type of thing. And I don't even think Shanahan believes to throw it away. In my mind, he thinks someone will be open. Like, there is no doubt in his mind that you go through your 4 progressions and then back, that someone's not going to be open if you follow the details. So I understand the idea of the possible mobile quarterback. My only concern, I guess, is, and it's a conservative concern, and it's, it's not the Andy Reid philosophy. And that is, if you bring in Mariota, he could be worse. He could not adapt to Shanahan's, view of the field. And you've seen Shanahan on the sidelines just throw his hands up, and when Jimmy's missing guys, or we've all texted each other when, what is he doing? This guy is, we've seen that. So again, it's just the conservative part of me going, we have Jimmy, we've seen that. And if we're only going with, I don't think Mariota is an upgrade. I think it's basically a wash. Jerry thinks it's a slight upgrade, but you're going into it with, we're still going to be having those same issues. Now maybe it's different because for every guy that he misses, maybe he picks up a first down with his legs, at some point during the game. But
it's also the cost, I guess, too, is the other factor, right? He's that much cheaper in theory, unless you give a new contract and then up it. But in theory, you could get him for a lot less. So that is like an upgrade in itself.
Well, if there's anything we've learned during these playoffs, as the great Coach Arians would say, no risk it, no biscuit. That's right? You gotta go for it.
All I know is there's going to be definite movement, and I think we're going to be in the mix. At least we should be for any number of these guys. So that's what we're going to see. I doubt they're just sitting there, especially if they talked about it last year with Tom Brady. I can't imagine they're just going to say, "No, we're good."
No, you guys know last offseason, I was like, we should go after Tom Brady. We should do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And no,
and here he is.
Super Bowl. Here he is. If ripe old age of 43, going to another Super Bowl.
Hey, if we're gonna give kudos, that's absolutely a kudos to you, because I was on the opposite side. I didn't want Brady. I saw his final year in New England and thought, the train is off the rails. I didn't see it. We were coming off the Super Bowl. So, I mean,
and I get that. I totally get that, because there were concerns. Brady looked like he was on the downward trajectory, and we're all hoping, when they made that decision to stick with Jimmy, that, okay, he's on the upward, right? He's got to get better. It'll be his second year. He will have that Matt Ryan year.
But again, to like Todd, even me, I thought the same thing. I didn't want Brady, but if it wasn't for all the injuries, we wouldn't necessarily be in this situation.
See, it's funny you say that, right? Because that's the one thing that people argue, like, well, even had Brady come, I mean, look at all the injuries.
Right. If Brady came and with all his injuries, it doesn't matter.
Well, I don't know, because
we wouldn't be in the Super Bowl without Bosa and all these guys. Come on.
No. Okay, let's say Bosa and Ford were the two major players who got hurt and are not a part of this, right? But I guess the way I also look at it is, number one, I feel like George Kittle, his season got off on a bad foot, literally when Jimmy threw that errant screen pass to him, and then he got walloped by Buda Baker.
You said it, and I thought, oh, he'll be back, and then just never was the same.
Right.
I know what I'm saying. Right. So he got hurt right from the get-go, and then maybe, how the body goes, like once some part gets hurt, the other parts compensate. So maybe did that have anything to do with his foot getting hurt later? I don't know. Well, but the thing is that you have to look, to me, I look at it from the overall. Had they signed Brady, they could have traded Jimmy. And for sure, after coming off of a Super Bowl, they could have got a first rounder for Jimmy last year. Agree or disagree?
Probably, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So we got a first rounder. Who
Maybe.
would we have gone with for that first rounder? We don't know, right? But could have been somebody to help us this year, right? And then because Brady's in the fold, everything you hear about Brady, the kind of impact that he had on the Bucs, that's the kind of the leadership and,
Yeah, I understand. One thing changes a lot, but still, just given how we were, if you just put Brady in there.
I understand. But what I'm saying is, I think there's that, I think people call it the butterfly effect, right? Where you put one different thing in and it changes everything based on that one variable that's changed.
Sure. And that's why it's a great conversation piece, because you will never know. But you'll never know. But if you just look at some things, I mean, who knows? Like Garoppolo, kind of left Kittle out to dry, which was what precipitated the initial injury, which hampered him all year. So most people would say, well, Brady's a better passer, so that pass doesn't get thrown like that, so Kittle doesn't get hurt, thus we have him. It's a reasonable, logical, path to follow. There's also, hey, the Niner quarterback got hit more than any other quarterback in the NFL, so did old man Brady finally take a hit or get rolled up on, and was Nick Mullins in there even earlier than before? And
all the running backs are hurt and everything else.
Totally understand. So, I mean, in going back to Jeff's point of they're having these conversations, yes, they're absolutely having these conversations. I mean,
like we are about all of these guys.
By all accounts, the Lions have already received initial, inquiries and offers. Now we got to remember, even though teams can agree to a trade, going back to Jerry and I's conversation earlier in this week, it's like your national letter of intent. You can agree to a trade, but that means nothing until it's actually pulled off March 17th when the new year starts. So if at any time another team gets cold feet or decides it's not really, they can pull it out. So it usually doesn't happen, because they're probably not going to announce it unless they're really rock solid, with an offer. But they're going to have these discussions, and they can kind of drag it out a little bit because there's no urgency right now to announce it. But you got to think these teams are going to want to. I would give it shortly after the Super Bowl, maybe, is when these dominoes start falling, because as right now, the coaches and all the scouts or personnel people are down in Mobile for the Senior Bowl, evaluating what will be the next draft class. So, and then you got the Super Bowl. So I agree. These conversations are being had, which is why I love having our conversations, because one thing about the Niners, since the Trent Baalke days, their front office and everything has been pretty tight-lipped. You don't hear very many things coming out of the front office, or, ooh, here's the rumor, here's this. What about you just don't hear that. So it's left to us to speculate, well, what would it take to get Deshaun Watson? What would it take to get Matthew Stafford? So it's fun and exciting.
Where do you think Matthew Stafford's going to end up? You think the Niners are going to get him?
I would say the Niners are probably second in line, I think. Because I think as even though Stafford doesn't have a no trade clause, I think the fact that they're mutually parting ways means Stafford's in on the conversations of what the trades are. And I would think he would be interested in going to the Niners. But I got to think the Colts are kind of the go-to because they're in the AFCs. They get Stafford out of the conference. They're going to be able to probably finagle the first round pick out of them, which is, in the low 20s or no, like 19, 20, whatever. So they're going to be able to get a first rounder possibly. So I would say the Colts are number one. The Niners are number two. And I think even 2B or number three will be Washington because his old general manager, Martin Mayhew, who drafted him out of Georgia and kind of oversaw, his coming of age in the NFL is now in a place that needs a quarterback. And again, they have a draft pick, number 19. That's not outrageous because it's not like they can't package things to get up into the top 5 to draft Zach Wilson or Justin Fields. So they're going to have to go the veteran route. So I would think those are the 3 teams.
Yeah, I was thinking all those exact same teams. I was thinking about this earlier today. I thought the Colts for sure. It's a short drive. It's in a dome. It's in the AFC. I mean, and then the other thing is, I guess, all the connections. You're saying he's connected to Mayhew. I mean, that seems to always play out. It does with Shanahan all the time, right? Always just picking up his old guys from his old team. So, but yeah, the Colts just seem like that makes perfect sense. They're ready to win right now as well. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Colts, Washington, I'd even put the Saints possibly getting in on it. Ahead of the Niners. I just don't know. I don't see the Niners giving up enough assets because I think for the Lions, their number one goal in trading Stafford is to get enough assets and then packaging it with their pick to move up into the top 3 to grab a new quarterback from this draft class.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree, which is why I think it would behoove the Lions to try and get as high a number 1 draft pick that they can get this year. Because if they can package their number 8 with Washington's 19, does that get them to number 4? Those types of things. If they want their assets right now to be able to go up and get one of these quarterbacks. And you mentioned the Saints, you just don't, again, talk about unprecedented. You don't see teams who go this deep in the playoffs, who, number 2 seat, like, granted, it's most likely going to be because of retirement of Breeze, but those teams don't come quarterback needy that often. So if you're Sean Payton and you're sitting with the 28th pick, why not flip that for Stafford? Why not flip that for Derek Carr? Why not go after, any number of these quarterbacks who might be able to step right in and pick up where his offense needs? Because while no one's going to throw the ball as accurate as Breeze, most likely, you already got Michael Thomas, you got Alvin Kamara, you got pieces that you just need someone to keep the engine running. And I don't think it's Taysom Hill or Jameis that are going to, keep the train on the tracks.
That's what's crazy looking over this list. I mean, Saints, what are the Falcons doing? Panthers, are they going to stick with Bridgewater? I mean, are the Broncos going to stick with their guy? The Steelers? I mean, there's so many.
There's a lot of uncertainty, and
Patriots, Jets. I mean, geez.
Yeah, they're back to somebody's going to end up getting desperate. Someone's going to trade for Jared Stidham, like an unreasonable draft pick just because, he was part of the Patriots organization and he can come in here. Like, a team's going to get desperate, which is why I think the Raiders are in a nice position because they have Mariota to flip for someone. And if all of a sudden there becomes a bidding war on Mariota, boy, what a gift horse that is for the Raiders to be able to pick up a somewhat high, possibly mid-round draft pick just because.
Right.
But
Speaking of desperate, I do think that seeing Tom Brady go to another Super Bowl, I think Bill Belichick is going to be desperate, and I think he's going to do something to make sure that he's not waiting till the very end to try to take a quarterback off the scrap heap like he did with Cam Newton this year.
Yeah. Well, not just out of desperation, but I mean, he has to. He's got nobody.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. So I don't know if there's ever a time to take advantage of a
maybe Lynch should be on the phone then, right? Hey, Bill, you want this guy back?
A mildly wounded animal and Bill Belichick take advantage, because it doesn't happen that often.
Right.
Belichick is not in the, needing to grovel position very often, but
right.
he can't be. I don't know what his Super Bowl plans are, but I'm not sure he's watching the game.
Yeah, right.
He cannot be happy to sit there. I mean, this isn't, these old coaches who watch the guy they, tutored throughout his years, finally. No, this is Bell being pretty bitter.
Yeah. And I don't think New England would be the destination that a Deshaun Watson would want to go to, or a Matt Stafford would want to go to.
No, I agree. I mean, if you have any leverage like Stafford and Deshaun, you've got to want to put yourself into the best possible position. And I mean, that's what your agent's for. Your agent's going to be talking to you and telling you, because these guys don't know draft picks and salary cap situation, but their agent's going to be sitting there and going, boom, boom, boom. Here's what this team can offer. Here's what you can do.
Sorry, which is weird, like we were texting about, hearing this stuff about Deshaun saying, my number one choice is the Jets. Why would Deshaun want to go to the Jets? It doesn't make any sense.
Well, yes, I agree with you, and I know Jerry agrees with you. But
right.
if the sales pitch is this, if you're Deshaun Watson, and someone comes to you, look, Deshaun, you get to go to the New York market. They have $70 million in cap space to spend, so they can go get, some assets. They got 4 first-rounders over the next 2 years. So even if they give up a couple of those for your trade, you still got assets to build upon. And they hired the guy who apparently he was real high on. So you get to play for that guy. Not saying that sells me if I'm Deshaun. I'm just saying if that's the sales pitch, there are worse pitches out there.
And you made it sound really nice, but you're giving up most of those picks. Yes, you have money. Are you going to blow the money?
Right.
And then you're going to a team that is just has nothing. You don't have Jamal Adams anymore. You don't have these other guys you traded away. Yeah. So, I mean, I think they're so far away still compared to, say, the Niners. That's right. Like,
I mean, Watson does not strike me as a guy who is looking to make this move to go into a rebuilding situation, which the Jets are. I mean, the roster is barren. I mean, right? So you talk about the salary cap space, you talk about, they have a lot of draft capital. Absolutely. Right. But I don't get all this talk about how he wants to play for Robert Saleh. He doesn't have a previous relationship with Saleh, as far as I know. And personally, it doesn't seem prudent to put all this pressure to win almost immediately on Saleh, who's a first-time head coach anywhere, because Watson isn't going to another organization to go 7-9 or 8-8, right? If he goes there, the pressure is to win now.
Right.
Well, we went the whole time without talking about the Texans and the fact that Deshaun kind of, I don't know if it certainly wasn't the trigger, but it was one of the things that pushed him over the edge, and that was he wanted Bieniemy to be the head coach. The Texans are the only team without a head coach. They could hire anybody they want except for somebody coming from the Bucks or the Chiefs. The fact that they haven't signed anybody, does that mean that they're leaning towards Bieniemy, and does that change anything?
Well, if you're listening to the whispers around the league, it sounds like it doesn't, because it's not. I think Deshaun's discontent with the Houston Texans is now beyond being disrespected by being ignored, on as far as like his head coaching input is concerned. I think it's gotten to a point where, looking back at the big picture, I mean, this is the same organization that called their players inmates, right? You can't, I think it was the late Bob McNair who said, you can't let the inmates run the prison, right? I think it's a culmination of just the way that the organization has sort of disrespected all their players as a whole, African-Americans in particular. And then you combine that with just where the organization is going. I mean, they don't have their own first round pick. They're coming off a 4-12 season, and you have a guy in Jack Easterby who's running the show there, which clearly not just Deshaun Watson, but it sounds like a lot of people don't like this guy, except for the owner.
Well, I would just say that it since they're the only ones left, so that it almost seems like it has to be Bieniemy. And if that's the case, to me, I would say that Bieniemy's only taking the job if Deshaun's there, unless he's just desperate for a job. So I would say that Deshaun's going to stay there with Bieniemy, and they're going to patch that somehow. That's what it would seem like at this point.
Well, I'm sure that's what they're trying to do. But like I said, I mean, the word around the league is that it's gotten beyond that it doesn't matter who the Texans hire as their head coach.
Yes.
I am Eric Bieniemy. Yes, I want to be a head coach, but I'll wait till next year. I would not go into that.
And then what do the Texans do at that point when he says, no, thank you, right? And then
I mean, the name that I'm hearing.
Come on down.
What's that?
Josh McCown, come on down.
Josh McCown. Well, the name that I'm hearing is Leslie Frazier. I mean, there is a guy who would definitely be even more desperate than Eric Bieniemy in terms of getting a job.
Well, he's available right now, so.
Yeah.
Yes, and I would totally agree with that. And by all accounts, he's a pacifying type of guy. He is the kind of guy who goes in and diffuses situations. He's the guy who goes in and negotiates, peace in the Middle East when it needs to be done. So if you're the Texans, that's got to be your hope. But I agree with you that it's probably not in Bieniemy's best interest to go there unless he has assurances from Deshaun that he's coming back. Because if I'm Bieniemy, give me one more year with Patrick Mahomes as his OC rather than whichever quarterback they want in Texas as their head coach, because that's not going to start off well.
Yeah, the last thing you want is to go into a situation where it's dysfunction junction, because nowadays it doesn't seem like a lot of these coaches get a second opportunity to get another head coaching job. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you don't want to go into a situation where, okay, let's say he goes, Deshaun says he'll stay, but all the while, all those guys in the front office are looking over Bieniemy's shoulder every single time there might be a loss or just a questionable decision. And I don't know. I just don't think that's an environment that Eric Bieniemy would want. And I'm personally just shocked that all these teams have overlooked him and not hired him. I get it. I get that. Hey, the Chiefs have gone deep into the playoffs, and it'd be hard for him to put together a staff, I suppose, at this late juncture. But I mean, to me, he, in similar fashion, where I was shocked that nobody was willing to wait for Kyle Shanahan when the Niners were looking, because to me, Shanahan was by far the best candidate out there.
Yes.
And I feel the same with Bieniemy. I feel like he's the best, if not one of the best, and yet I'm shocked that people weren't willing to wait, or unless there are other reasons.
Which I guess is maybe just part of the flaw in the system, that you have to wait until they're out, because then nobody wants to wait, and then he's just stuck there, and he can't get a staff together. He can't get anything going. But yeah, I mean, it's just a tough one though, because if he goes to Houston, I don't see him going without Deshaun. So
well, he won't go to Houston without Deshaun, that's for sure.
Yeah, and then if he doesn't and Deshaun's out, they hire Frazier, and then we're like, hey, Frazier, 3 firsts, let's go. Right? You got to rebuild your team, and you should take Jimmy, because you know him. Stereo knows him, so just take Jimmy. There you go.
All right. Well, we've touched on a whole lot of things. 99% of it being quarterback related, which, just like the NFL, is what drives the sport and drives the conversation. We waited a couple weeks to see all the head coaching dominoes start to fall, and all but the Texans has. Now we're going to start waiting for all the quarterback drama to unfold, and those dominoes start to fall. So we're going to have no shortage of things to discuss. But before we get out of here, Jerry, final thoughts?
Well, like you said, we didn't really actually get a chance to talk about the new head coaching press conferences. And, while the introductory press conferences should not really have much of an impact on how a new head coach will perform, how often have we seen that awkward first impression end up setting the tone for a coach's inevitable demise, from crazy-eyed Adam Gase to the random ramblings of the Niners, Jim, the water boy, Tom Sula. So I was very intrigued, actually, to see who would go El Pollo Loco and get insane in the membrane during these past hires. And, of course, the unanimous winner, hands down, was Detroit's Dan the Macho Man Campbell, yeah. Because under the guidance of Sean Payton, Mr. Fuji, and Bobby the Brain Heenan, the dude is ready to get physical with an F, yeah. And to bite your kneecaps, yeah. And to snap into a Slim Jim, yeah. So it's no wonder Matthew Stafford made public his desires to leave Detroit shortly thereafter.
And that was exactly my first thought was, if I'm Matt Stafford, I'm saying, get me the hell out of here. Well, who's this guy? That was very well put. You put in all these old school wrestlers. That was great, man. Oh my God, Dan Campbell. Like, what is he talking about? There's one thing to be a leader and say we're going to be physical. I love it. Let's be aggressive. We're going to buy off your kneecap. Like, who do you have on your roster? What are you going to do with this team?
Well, because apparently the missing ingredients for the Lions this whole time was insanity and cannibalism.
But I don't know how it's going to end up. I mean, because it seems like he's putting together a pretty good staff so far. I don't know. For just from the few names I saw, Anthony Lynn and some of these guys, I don't know. But it's still Detroit, so whatever.
Jeff, do you have final thoughts besides Dan Campbell's kneecaps?
I guess you just have to give props again to Tom Brady. 10 Super Bowls. I mean, what a stud from San Mateo, California. My boy, TB12. I got to get that book. I got to read it. I got to get the TB12 method going so I can get a little more limber and start looking like Tom Brady. He looks younger than, I don't even know. He looks younger than the 28-year-olds out there. Jeez.
Dude, he looks better now than he did coming out for the draft.
Jeez, unbelievable, this guy.
Probably pretty close. And finally, just on a football related note, I get so excited for the opening weekend of the NFL season. I mean, it's Christmas, my birthday, and 4th of July all rolled up into one weekend because it's just so exciting that you get to kick off with that Thursday game and you get all the weekend games, and football's here, and it's here for 16 regular season weeks. Well, the opposite is occurring this week or next week, right before the Super Bowl. And that is, once the Super Bowl kicks off and the confetti falls at the end, we're going to be without actual football for a long, long time. And that is distressing. And part of me, this past Monday, as I was flipping through the TV channels, I was begging just to come across a live Bengals versus Jaguars football game, because as much as I hate those games when they come on Thursday night football or Sunday night and you're like, I would watch anything besides these two teams, I won't. I love my NFL, and next year when the Bengals are playing pick your poison, the Texans, in a battle of no-win teams, I want you to remind me, soon enough, there will be no more Monday Night Football. So right. Enjoy the Super Bowl. We will get into the breakdown next week. We'll also get into another week's worth of NFL conversations. And we're going to get into something, hopefully, that we got in the discussion last week after the camera stopped rolling and after the recording stopped. And that was, is there any legitimate chance that the best college football program could beat the worst NFL football program? Could this year's Alabama team beat the New York Jets? So that we're going to have that discussion, because two people on this panel strenuously objected to each other about the contents of that subject. So we'll get to that hopefully next week. So for Todd and Jerry and Jeff, thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, like us on Apple Podcasts, follow us on Twitter at 3 Side Sports. For now, until next week, goodbye.
Yeah.
Yeah.